You know that moment when someone shows you their wedding budget spreadsheet and your first instinct is to laugh because you genuinely think they're joking? Like when they casually mention spending $4,000 on flowers that will be dead by Tuesday, or dropping $12,000 on a venue that guests will spend maybe 5 hours inside before stumbling into an Uber. And then you realize they're completely serious, and suddenly you're doing mental math in the background thinking about what that money could have done instead. There's a specific number where a single day celebration crosses the line from meaningful experience to genuine financial self-destruction. And almost nobody talks about it because weddings are emotional, and questioning someone's wedding budget makes you the villain at every dinner party. Society has convinced us that a dream wedding is something you deserve, that spending $30,000, $50,000, or even $70,000 on a single day is not just acceptable but expected. Your parents did it, your friends are doing it, Instagram is showing you what it should look like, and the entire wedding industry, which generates over $70 billion a year in the US alone, is designed to make you feel like spending less means you love your partner less. But here's what nobody in that industry will ever tell you. That one day could cost you an entire decade of financial freedom. Not metaphorically, literally. The math is brutal once you actually run it, and today we're going to run it together. Hey friends, I'm the voice behind Next Gen Finance Guide, and I spend an honestly unreasonable amount of time breaking down the financial decisions that silently shape your entire life. Not the obvious ones everyone talks about, the emotional ones, the ones that feel right in the moment but quietly rearrange your future without permission. If that's the kind of thinking that helps you make sharper decisions with your money, subscribe and stick around because this one's going to change how you see a lot more than just weddings. So let me ask you something. When you imagine your financial future, what's the biggest threat? Most people would say something like losing their job, a medical emergency, maybe a market crash. Almost nobody says their wedding, and that's exactly why it's so dangerous. Think about it this way. Imagine you're training for a marathon. You've been building endurance for months, eating right, staying disciplined, and then the night before the race, someone convinces you to run a full sprint for 3 miles just because the crowd is cheering. You burn through your energy reserves in a burst of adrenaline and applause. The next morning, you can barely walk, let alone race. That's what a dream wedding does to your financial marathon. It's a short, intense, emotionally charged sprint that burns through resources you spent years accumulating. And the crowd, your family, your friends, social media, they're all cheering while it happens. Nobody stops to ask whether you'll be able to finish the actual race. And here's where it gets really uncomfortable. The reason people overspend on weddings isn't because they're irresponsible, it's because weddings hijack your brain in ways that almost no other purchase can. Psychologists call it the spotlight effect, combined with social comparison bias. On your wedding day, you are literally the center of attention. Every decision you make about that day, the dress, the venue, the food, the flowers, feels like it reflects who you are as a person and how much you value your relationship. That's an enormous amount of emotional weight to attach to a purchasing decision.
Research from Emory University actually studied this. They found that couples who spent over $20,000 on their wedding were 46% more likely to divorce than couples who spent between $5,000 and $10,000. Let that sink in. Spending more on the wedding didn't just fail to improve the marriage, it was actively correlated with worse outcomes. Not because expensive weddings cause divorce, but because the financial stress that follows creates cracks in the exact relationship the wedding was supposed to celebrate. Now let's talk numbers, because this is where most people's jaws hit the floor. The average American wedding in 2024 costs roughly $35,000. Some estimates push it closer to $40,000 depending on the city. Let's be conservative and use $35,000. If you took that same $35,000 and invested it in a diversified index fund earning an average 8% annual return, here's what happens. In 10 years, that $35,000 becomes approximately $75,500. In 20 years, it grows to around $163,000. In 30 years, you're looking at roughly $352,000. And if you let it ride for 40 years until retirement, that single $35,000 turns into approximately $760,000. $750,000 from money that was instead spent on a party that lasted 6 hours. But here's the part that will really twist the knife. Most couples don't pay for their wedding in cash, they finance it. According to the Knot, nearly 1 in 3 couples go into debt for their wedding, with an average wedding debt of about $10,000 to $15,000. So now you're not just losing the $35,000 in future growth, you're also paying interest on the portion you borrowed. You're starting your marriage in a financial hole and then wondering why the first few years feel so stressful. That's not a foundation, that's a trap with flowers on it. Now, I know what you're probably thinking, but it's my wedding. It's supposed to be special. I've dreamed about this since I was a kid. Am I supposed to just go to a courthouse and call it a day? And look, I hear you. I'm not saying your wedding shouldn't matter. I'm not saying spend nothing. I'm saying there's a massive gap between a meaningful, beautiful wedding and a financially devastating one. And most people don't even realize they've crossed that line until the credit card statements start arriving in the honeymoon hotel. The question isn't whether you should celebrate, of course you should. The question is whether a $35,000 party is genuinely 7 times more meaningful than a $5,000 one, because that's the trade-off. And most couples, if they were honest with themselves, would admit that the best moments of their wedding had nothing to do with the price tag. Here's what nobody talks about though, and this might be the most important part of this whole video. When you choose to have a financially intentional wedding, you're not just saving money. You're making the first major decision of your marriage together based on logic, shared values, and long-term thinking instead of emotion, social pressure, and Instagram aesthetics. Think about what that signals to yourself and to each other. It means you're the kind of couple who can resist external pressure when it matters. You can separate what you actually want from what you've been told to want. You can look at a $35,000 price tag and ask, is this aligned with our real goals, instead of blindly swiping the card because everyone expects you to. That's not being cheap, that's being strategic. And that mindset, choosing intentionally when everyone around you is spending emotionally, is exactly the skill that builds wealth over the next 30 years. Let's make this concrete. Imagine 2 couples getting married in the same year. Couple A spends $38,000 on a traditional dream wedding. Beautiful venue, premium catering, designer dress, live band, professional photography with a drone, the works. They put $12,000 of it on credit cards. The day is magical. The debt takes 3 years to pay off. Couple B spends $7,000 on a smaller, intentional wedding. Beautiful outdoor ceremony, catered dinner for 60 people, a great photographer, and a playlist instead of a live band. They invest the remaining $28,000. Fast forward 5 years, couple A has finally paid off the wedding debt but almost has nothing saved. They're arguing about money. They can't afford a house down payment. Every unexpected expense feels like a crisis. Couple B's $28,000 has grown to around $41,000. They've continued adding to it. They have a down payment ready. They're looking at houses from a position of strength, not desperation. They're not arguing about money because money isn't a source of stress. It's a source of options.
Same love, same commitment, same marriage, completely different financial trajectory. And the only difference was one decision made on one day. Here's what drives me crazy about how we talk about weddings as a culture. We'll spend months agonizing over whether to buy the $5 coffee or make it at home. We'll feel guilty about a $15 lunch. We'll clip coupons and hunt for discount codes on a $40 purchase. But then we'll drop $35,000 on a single day and call it the best money we ever spent. The selective blindness is staggering. We apply financial discipline to the things that barely matter and throw it completely out the window for the things that could genuinely alter our financial future. A $5 daily coffee costs you about $1,825 a year. A $35,000 wedding costs you $760,000 in lost retirement growth. But somehow the coffee is the problem. If you really want to build wealth, stop optimizing the nickels and start questioning the avalanches. And here's something that might surprise you. Choosing a financially smart wedding doesn't just change your bank account, it changes your marriage. Money is the #1 cause of stress in relationships and one of the leading causes of divorce. When you start your marriage without debt and with a growing investment account, you remove the single biggest source of conflict before it even begins. You're not fighting about bills, you're planning vacations. You're not stressing about rent, you're discussing which neighborhood to buy in. You're not hiding purchases from each other, you're building towards shared goals with complete transparency. That financial breathing room creates emotional breathing room, and emotional breathing room is where great marriages actually live.
not in the memory of an expensive party, but in the daily reality of a life that doesn't feel financially suffocating. But here's where I have to be honest with you. The wedding industry does not want you to hear any of this. They've spent decades building a machine that connects spending with love. More expensive ring equals more commitment. Bigger venue equals more significance. Pricier dress equals more beauty. And if you question any of it, you're labeled as unromantic, cheap, or worse, someone who doesn't take the relationship seriously. This is marketing. Brilliant, emotionally manipulative, devastatingly effective marketing. And it works because it targets you at the most emotionally vulnerable moment of your life when you're in love and willing to do anything to prove it. Don't confuse the size of the wedding with the strength of the marriage. They have almost nothing to do with each other. The couples who last aren't the ones who spent the most on the party. They're the ones who built the strongest foundation after it. Look, your wedding should be one of the best days of your life. I genuinely believe that. But it shouldn't come at the cost of the next 10 years of your life. One intentional decision, choosing a celebration that reflects your values instead of your Instagram feed, could be the difference between starting your marriage with momentum or starting it with a chain around your ankle. Your future self, the one trying to buy a house, raise kids, retire with dignity, they're watching the decision you make right now. And trust me, they won't remember the centerpieces. They'll remember whether you gave them a head start or a setback. This is Next Gen Finance Guide. If this changed how you think about money even a little bit, subscribe, because we do this every single week. I'll see you in the next one.